Representative Jennings.
Mr. Speaker, you are now live on YouTube.
Thank you. The House will please come to order. Welcome, members, to the seventh day of our 66th legislative session for 2021. Chief Clerk, please call the roll. And just a note, I think we have one committee that's still out. So, oh, I guess they're back in. So should be everybody present. So please proceed, Chief Clerk. Please call the roll.
Convening roll call for the seventh day, Wednesday, February 3rd, 2021. Andrew.
Here.
Baker.
Here.
Banks.
Here.
Bear. Bear.
He's in committee meeting right now.
Blackburn.
Here.
Brown.
Here.
Burkhart.
Here, and committee just adjourned.
Burt.
Present.
Clausen.
Here.
Clifford.
Mr. Speaker, I think Labor and Health is still in committee.
You are muted, sir.
Just continue, Chief Clerk. We'll leave the roll open.
Clifford. Connolly. Crago.
Present.
Duncan. Here. Eklund.
Here.
Air.
Here.
Flitner. Fortner.
Here.
Gray.
Here.
Greer.
Here.
Hallinan. Haroldson.
Present.
Harshman.
Here.
Heiner.
Here.
Henderson.
Here.
Hunt. Jennings.
Here.
Kenner.
Here.
Knapp.
Here.
Larson Lloyd.
Here.
Larson Dan.
Here.
McGuire.
Present.
Martinez. Nyman.
Here.
Newsom. Here. Nicholas.
Here.
Oakley.
Here.
Obermuller.
Here.
O'Hearn.
Here.
Olson.
Here.
Ottman. Ottman. Paxton.
Here.
Provenza.
Here.
Roscoe.
Here.
Schwartz.
Here.
Sherwood.
Here.
Simpson.
Here.
Summers.
Here.
Stiff.
Here.
Stivar. Stivar. Sweeney.
Here.
Walters.
Here.
Washit. Washit. Western. Western. Orf. Orf. Williams.
Present.
Wilson. Winter.
Here.
Yin.
Present.
Zawanitzer.
Here.
Mr. Speaker.
Here. Thank you, Chief Clerk. Just for the members of the body, and we're not going to close the roll as we have committees that are still meeting, and many of those folks are here. Chief Clerk, I do see if you want to call Western, he would be present.
Western.
Here.
Thank you very much, Chief Clerk. So we'll leave the roll open. Members, if you now join me for our prayer with Chairman Harshman.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker and fellow members of the House. Members, in my Bible study, we use acronyms to help with our daily prayers, and I'd like to share one of these acronyms with you today. And the one I want to share is called TACOS. So please bow your heads in prayer. The T is for Thanksgiving. Heavenly Father, thank you for all your blessings. Today we gather with grateful hearts for all the blessings you have bestowed on our world, our nation, and our precious Wyoming. We give thanks to you, Lord, for your loving kindness is everlasting. The A is for adoration, and we know that yours, O Lord, is the greatness and the power and the glory and the victory and the majesty. We adore you, O Lord, for your deep love of us, your humble servants. The C is for confession. Father, as we pause and think of the times we fell short of your glory, please forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation and deliver us from evil. The O is for others. And Heavenly Father, today we pray with empathy for all those who have been lost in this pandemic, their families, and all your people whose lives have been immeasurably changed. We ask that you look over our families, our service members, and all those who are working in service to others. And finally, the S is for self. Father, help us as fellow members of this Wyoming House to follow the golden rule, to focus on what unites us and let go what divides us. Father, let us not forget that the tongue is a small part of the body, yet it boasts of great things. You teach us that a great forest is set aflame by a small spark. Help us, O Lord, to have strength in our work and to speak greatness and lead in a way that brings honor and glory to you. Lord, let us live and lead and legislate as taught in Proverbs 3, verse 5 and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not lean on your own understanding. Acknowledge him in all your ways, and he will make your paths straight. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Chairman Harshman. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us in our prayer and our Pledge of Allegiance. We appreciate it. So each day, yesterday I kind of got out of sync and didn't give a shout out. Wyoming House of Representatives, thank you, and I guess a mention to folks at the beginning of the day, and I did so after lunch, after our noon recess, excuse me. But today, first responders, those folks that work in our communities and across our great state, and our fire rescue and our EMS, paramedics, law enforcement, whether it be sheriff, police, or DCI, volunteer, firemen, all those folks who are there when we need them, when something goes wrong, and protecting and serving our families and our communities. So we're thankful. We appreciate all the work that you are doing every day and night, whether it's in a mine rescue operation or out on the cold and dark highway. We appreciate all that you're doing on behalf of Wyoming and its citizenry. So with that, Chief Clerk, Journal Committee report, please.
Your Journal Committee reports that the Journal of February 2nd, 2021 has been read and recommend that it be approved. Signed, Representatives Haroldson and Provenza.
Thank you very much. Members, I do have a message now, just a general announcement. Generally on Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays at noon, there would be a education committee meeting. And there was just a bit of a technical issue, and it did not get announced or did not get posted online. Just these things happen once in a while. So there will not be an education meeting today at noon. It will be rescheduled for another time for that issue. And as you know from our rules, We're required to post our meetings publicly the day before. And so when that doesn't occur, we do the right thing, the responsible thing, and we cancel that, postpone the consideration of those issues to another day. And certainly that's what we're doing this time. So we thank you we apologize for any confusion that might have caused in the public and for our committee, House Education Committee. But we will take up they will take up that business, just not today as may have been anticipated. So Chief Clerk, any messages from the Senate?
No, sir.
No reports from standing committees yet?
No, sir.
All right, members, we're on that order of business on bills on second reading. The first bill for our consideration is Senate File 14.
Senate File 14, sponsored by Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions. Credit for Reinsurance, an act relating to insurance.
Senate File 14, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Next bill for our consideration is Senate File 29.
Senate File 29, sponsored by Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivision. Revised Uniform Law on Notarial Acts, an act relating to notaries.
Senate File 29, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Next bill for our consideration is Senate File 32.
Senate File 32, sponsored by Appropriations. Water Permit Notice Requirements, an act relating to water.
Senate File 32, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Next bill for our consideration is Senate File 37.
Senate File 37, sponsored by Select Water. Omnibus Water Bill Planning, an act relating to water development projects.
Senate File 37, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, is so ordered. Next bill for our consideration is Senate File 54.
Senate File 54, sponsored by Labor, Health, and Social Services. Statewide Health Information Exchange Codification, an act relating to the administration of government.
Senate File 54, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, is so ordered. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 57.
Senate File 57, sponsored by Education. School finance dates for fund transfers, an act relating to school finance.
Senate File 57, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Chief Clerk, I'm being told that there is an amendment coming for Senate File 60, and it has not posted yet. So would you mind, could we
I haven't
roll?
received anything from the attorneys either.
Okay, so could we roll, just set it back and we'll roll to House Bill 29, please?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. House Bill 29 House Bill 29 does have an amendment. Next bill for consideration is House Bill 29. It does have an amendment. And just folks that are on their internet page looking at amendments, we've been just doing House bills, and now we're on a House Senate files. Now we're on a House bill, so you may have to change your setting. House Bill 29 has a second reading amendment. Chairman Zwanitzer.
We need to read it in, please, sir.
I'm sorry. Chief Clerk, please, the reading of the bill.
House Bill 29, sponsored by Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions. Burial for indigent persons, an act relating to indigent person burial expenses.
Thank you, Chief Clerk, for the gentle reminders. We do have an amendment on House Bill 29. Chairman Zwanitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to move Second Amendment reading number 1 to House Bill 29 and ask for its favorable consideration. Members, you'll remember the discussion we had yesterday on indigent burials, and the question was asked why it would be a biennial reimbursement to the counties instead of an annual reimbursement. I did go back and check with the association, which oversees counties, and with the department, and both relayed to me that they certainly could do an annual distribution. So what you'll see in the amendment, because it was such a lengthy standing committee amendment or committee of the whole amendment. We had to put the whole amendment back up to amend these sections. So the only actual wording changes you'll see on lines 20 and 21 of the amendment, which changes the language to the preceding fiscal year instead of for the biennium. And so you'll see that language mirrored in both 183504 and 1914-101. And again, this amendment takes it from counties being able to receive repayment for indigent burials every biennium to every year on August 1st. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any discussion on the amendment? Any discussion on the amendment?
Question.
Seeing none. All those in favor of second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 29, please raise your hand to your screen. Those opposed? Thank you. The amendment has been adopted. House Bill 29, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a 3rd time? Hearing no objection is so ordered. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 49.
Sorry, sir. House Bill 49, sponsored by Appropriations, agency fee revisions, and act relating to agency fees.
Thank you, Chief Clerk. We do have amendments. Number 1 is Representative Schwartz. Representative Schwartz.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was not quite prepared for it at this moment. Move second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 49, and I ask for your favorable consideration. To start with, I'd just like to explain the amendment. It's really quite simple. The meat of it is on lines 11 through 13, which delete the entire language on pages 2, starting with line 4 through page 3 through line 8, which are all of the adjustment, the added fees for parolees and probationers, and then the various items on lines 1 through 9 are just conforming in the title and in section 1. So I think there are 2 components to my concern with this part of the agency fee revision bill. The first part's technical. The bill is about agency fee revision. And this part of the bill is not a fee revision. This is actually a policy change that I don't think it was appropriate for this to be reviewed by committee number 2. I think it would be better reviewed by committee number 1 and then re-referred to committee number 2 on the exact funding piece. And I also had technical concerns with the language, specifically that it would be reviewed based on significant financial hardship, but there really isn't any definition of significant financial hardship. And there's no mechanism shown here for a parolee or probationer to contest that determination. But more importantly, I have substantive issues with this fee revision, as it's called. The first is basically the assumption is it's going to raise $1 million a year. I found that a little speculative. From what I've seen in other states, that's not the case. And when you're looking at a department with a budget of $285 million a biennium, it's not really what I consider a significant enough revenue increase to warrant this kind of policy change. And then I also wonder that our goal is to reduce recidivism. And I have doubts that these fees will actually help that. My concern is they will do the reverse. If you look a little bit farther in that part of the statute to Article 18, which is sanctions and incentives. And the problem is we talk a lot about sanctions, which these would be more sanctions. Essentially, we don't deal with incentives very well. And I think we need to consider them in tandem, not just one side or the other. And sanctions can be appropriate, but they're not always so. So my preference would be to incorporate these changes into an ongoing review of criminal justice reform rather than deal with it separately. And I would ask for an aye on the amendment as well as an aye on the bill. Thank you very much.
You are muted, sir.
Thank you, Chief Clerk. It sounded just fine down here, but thank you very much. We are on second reading, so second reading debate rules apply. So Chairman Olson and then Representative Stith, first time Chairman Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and for the amendment, sponsor the amendment, obviously, but on and for the bill, strongly for the bill. And I wanted to give a little bit of context to the body on this provision, particularly in the fee bill, and then I'll speak more directly onto the amendment. But I think the context is helpful. So I served on appropriations, and when you're on appropriations, you have agencies that are kind of your babies, and the department that oversees the housing of our inmates was one that I was assigned to. So the fee bill, a lot of this has been said too. A lot of work went into the fee bill over an interim where the individual legislators on appropriations got with the agencies and really worked through possible fees. So this being one of mine, I think it's important for the body to understand the genesis of why the fees are in here. The department specifically requested the fees. And I think that's important because we may have beat up on our good friend from the land where the water is sweet a little too much, I think, yesterday. And, he's just doing his job and carrying this forward to the agency, as I did myself as well, when I am the one who put these fees in the fee bill, doing my job to bring it forward to my committee on appropriations from the agency. The only conversation that was ever had is very similar to one that we're having now, but it was very small, and it didn't last very long. The good representative from the county where those majestic mountains are, he raised his concern in the committee as well. I had the same answer that our good representative, the good lawyer from the county where the water is sweet, had the exact same answer on the probation topic. And I still believe it's true, which is that no good judge is going to revoke probation because somebody failed to pay this fee. It just wouldn't make sense. Now, that being said, I say that with a caveat. It still gives me a little bit of heartburn as a lawyer and as a person who strongly favors justice reform. It gives me heartburn because if the offender comes back in front of the judge numerous times, what will the judge do? I don't know. Maybe at some point he will revoke it or she will revoke it. Maybe there are some judges out there that would revoke it on the first one. None of us can guarantee what a judge will or won't do. I really felt comfortable with that, moving it forward. So then when we come to the body, I listened to the body, and I think I'm very confident now in saying that my good friend from the county where those majestic mountains are, he's right. I thought maybe he was wrong in committee. I thought maybe we had a safeguard in our judicial system through our judges. And I love all my judges, don't get me wrong. But I share the same heartburn. I've always shared the same heartburn. If you look at this fee, there's really three parts to it. Two parts don't give me any heartburn, probably wouldn't give most people heartburn. There's a compact transfer fee, a UA testing fee, and the supervision fee. I think the heartburn that is arising inside of the committee is formed around the supervision fee mostly. The compact fee, to me, doesn't have It doesn't really have a negative repercussion. Somebody pays a fee to be transferred to be housed in another facility in another state. You know, they don't pay it, they don't get transferred. That's probably not going to have a huge impact on their ability to excel through the correction system. The problem is that fee is very minimal in what it would bring in. It's like estimated at $60,000. So if you're scrapping all the fees, you know, and you want to keep that one fee, in other words, if you're not confident you want to scrap everything through this amendment, there could be future amendments that carve out what you keep and what you don't keep. $60,000, does it do a whole lot? I don't know. The UA testing fee, still not a whole lot of heartburn. Okay, you're going to take a test, put some skin in the game. If you fail to take your test, you know, that usually could be a reason for revocation. So heartburn starts to rise a little bit with that one. You know, is that going to impede upon someone's ability to excel through supervision through the system? Possibly. It brings in a minimal amount as well. The big fee is the supervision fee, right? It's estimated somewhere around I've got on my information, $1.5 million ish. So it's still not a whole lot. That's based on $25. But that's where the heartburn comes, right? So what if we're wrong and someone fails to pay their fee and they receive a sanction? What would their sanction be? Could be some type of interest, could be an additional fee or fine, could be driver's license being suspended. You know, you could go up the list until you get all the way to we'll revoke your probation. And that's where I don't think anybody wants to end up. So that's why I support the amendment. I think if you don't want to go that far, I have a second reading amendment. If you're kind of in the middle and you're thinking, you know, I think they need to have some skin in the game. I think they need to pay for some of their services, but I don't want to hurt their ability to transcend and excel through the system. Then you can keep the fee in and you can consider the next amendment, which would restrict the judicial system's ability to revoke probation strictly on a failure to pay. So you've got some options in front of you, I think. I won't lose any sleep if we pass this amendment and we don't put $1.5 million in and we further our justice system. If we don't take this out, though, then we've got to do something on the next reading, or we've got to do something on the next amendment, because I'm not fully comfortable, and I think most people aren't, as I'm hearing from the body. So, Mr. Speaker, that's where I'm at. I thought it was helpful if I explained some context so that our good friend from the county where the water is sweet has the duty of defending this. I put it in. I'm not trying to take it out. So thank you, body, and I would appreciate an aye vote on the amendment.
Thank you very much. Representative Stith on the amendment.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I would request the body to vote no on this amendment, but to pass the next amendment, which we'll talk about in a moment. These are individuals paying supervisory fees who they've committed a crime, and so it's fair that they pay the cost of the supervision as opposed to the taxpayers paying the full freight of it. As the good representative from District 11 mentioned, the amount of these fees and the imposition of these fees was something brought to the committee by the agency in question, and it was deemed that it wouldn't be onerous to collect, and it would be a practicable, workable system. Many other states do this. This is not something unusual or out of the box. And with respect to the amount of money involved, we need to scrape for every nickel that we can. So ask for a no vote on this one. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Representative Washut, Vice Chair Washut.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's not very often where the good representative from Ski Slope Heaven and I agree on policy issues, but today is one. I really do think that this is a policy topic that should have come before Judiciary Committee for some discussion. As I mentioned yesterday, for example, there's no provision in here for a priority of payment. We ask many of our offenders to make a contribution to the Victims' Compensation Fund. We ask many of our offenders to pay restitution to victims. We ask many of our offenders to pay fines. And now we're going to ask many of our offenders to pay supervision fees. Which comes first? If an offender has limited resources, do they pay the supervision fee first and perhaps forsake the victim's compensation fund? I think the ramifications of these changes are worthy of a more detailed dive within the Judiciary Committee. And in the end, we may go this way. I certainly agree that if we can generate 1.5 million, that's nothing to sneeze at, and probably would be something that we would consider. But the bill is basically revising and upping the fees paid in a number of other areas. And then this one section, we create brand new fees out of whole cloth. And so I think that we need to take a look at this. I have a question of justice. You have two offenders who commit the very same crime. One of them's unemployed and destitute, and the other one happens to have a job at the day of his sentencing. And now one of them has to pay supervision fees and the other one may not. So I think it's worthy of a bigger look by the Judiciary Committee, and I'll support this amendment today.
Thank you very much. Chairman Nicholas, for your first time. Anybody, other members, please queue up. Chairman Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and against the amendment. So ladies and gentlemen, the department came and testified in front of us. We asked them the same kind of questions and inquiries that have been raised up today and yesterday. What they told us was that they would not use the fees in a draconian or in a punishing way, that they would only require the fees to be paid when the parolee or the probationer was capable of paying it. So it's kind of be on a needs or on an ability basis, and they wouldn't use non-payment to revoke probation or parole. What they did say is most other states charge a lot more fees than we do. And so what we're doing is more in line with what other states do, but we are still below what most other states are in our charges that we assess to probationers and parolees. And I think you just have to take in consideration that these gentlemen or individuals have already cost our system tens of thousands of dollars because of the judges, because of the courts, paying for the jails, paying for the probation agents. I mean, the cost is it's amazing. It's probably, depending on how you calculate it, but it's easily over a year's time close to $60,000 to $80,000 per individual. I mean, those are just rough general numbers that we've heard in the past. So the idea that we can't reasonably assess these fees and give latitude to the agency to just on how they're going to implement it so that to minimize the impact to the probationers and the parolees, I think is reasonable. So basically, we took the department at their word that they would be fair with it, that they wouldn't use it to penalize. But when those folks are capable of doing it, they ought to help pay the cost of what they cost us. So on and against.
Thank you very much. Representative Provenza and then Representative Sweeney on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and in support of the amendment, I alluded to yesterday that there's some issues in assuming that these fees are actually going to generate revenue. And there are two major problems that I have with these fees in particular. There's a wealth of evidence that supports it. Having these fees and fines ends up hurting our main goal of rehabilitation. So you're taking the goal from the criminal justice system and trying to make it about generating revenue instead of rehabilitating and ensuring that our communities are safer, that we don't have as many people incarcerated. And so imposing more fines and fees ultimately results in folks really struggling to get back on their feet, get jobs. It hurts in indirect ways, so it might cause someone to have credit issues, which can hurt employment, can hurt housing. And those are two main things that are indicative of whether someone can be rehabilitated or not in a more long-term way. So we're potentially maybe making a buck here, but we might be spending $4 down the road. And there's other evidence to suggest that as well. It's hard to track how the money ends up falling, because it's hard to track how, what the indirect consequences of something are. So for example, we might know that New Mexico, in their fees and fines, best estimates show that when they impose fees and fines, and it's hard to pull apart from sentencing issues as well, but essentially they end up spending $1.17 to collect every dollar of revenue it raises. So that costs money. There are other states, Texas, that have demonstrated that they lose money in many counties for this issue. And probation and parole is more expensive for smaller communities, more rural areas, oftentimes. And so are we asking those folks that live in those areas to spend more money, and they also have higher incidents of trying to find work? They're struggling to get by financially. The evidence just doesn't, I don't feel comfortable with it. The evidence has demonstrated that it doesn't complete the goal of our criminal justice system of rehabilitation. And then it doesn't complete the goal of finding money to help pay for the system. So I think we're looking at some pretty dire consequences or at least some consequences. I can't say for sure. Again, it's hard to track how much this is going to cost, but other states may do this, and I imagine that other states are also facing repercussions for it, and there's evidence on that as well. So I would urge you to vote in favor of this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Representative Provenza. Representative Sweeney, for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So my question in relationship to the amendment is, was there consideration at any point, if I understand things correctly, the bill requires every person to be charged. So is there any differentiation, or was there any consideration for our youth offenders and how that affects the parents in that relationship? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. Any other member for their first time? For their first time. I have Representative O'Hearn and Representative Yin on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm on and against the amendment, but for amendment number 2. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Yin on the amendment, and then Representative Ottman.
Mr. Speaker, first for a second. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Ottman.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would just like to say I am on and for this amendment, just for a couple reasons, some of which have been mentioned. For one instance, some of the people that we're going to be dealing with are people that don't have organized lives. Number one, they may not go for their urine tests on time, so therefore they're being looked for. They may not go to the post office, have stamps, have a place to live, or any of those things. So to suspect or require that they would be responsible enough to pay a $10 fee or $25 fee looks to me as though we're putting them in a place just to fail again. What I would suggest is that this portion be divided out and put with the justice system, and then create a sliding scale, because people that are working also shouldn't be penalized for paying fines and dues and have to pay for all these things. Although, you know, they have committed a crime, but they shouldn't have to pay when other people don't. So a sliding scale may be an answer that I would suggest. I guess that's about it. I am on and for the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else on the amendment? On the amendment, is anyone unclear about what they feel of the amendment? Representative Western.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to piggyback off the words of the good representative from Albany County, and I think she was spot on. And I think we ultimately have to ask ourselves, is there something that we can do, albeit however small, to help some of these folks who are in a criminal justice system? Because the fact of the matter is, some of them are folks who, for lack of a better way to phrase it, are repeat offenders and probably should be there. But there are a lot who are not, who are caught in this hamster wheel cycle of being dealt a tough hand in life and are kind of being stuck there. And these fees kind of compound. And I think, sure, is this the hill to die on for criminal justice reform? Probably not. But I think that if we can help even in a small way with some of these folks, and then that's a win for them. And one could argue this is an abdication of us holding them responsible for their bad actions. And I disagree with that. People, yes, they need to be held responsible for their actions. But I think that if this is something that we can help a lot of those folks who are caught in this hamster wheel cycle of poverty or really tough conditions, whether it be $10 or $20 or $50 or whatever it is, I think we should try to help them out. So on and for. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Representative Oakley, for your first time on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First for a second.
Thank you. Any other members for their first time? Any other members for their first time? Members for their first time, seeing none. Members for their second time. Any member for their second time? Member for their second time, rep to the sponsor, Representative Schwartz.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So first, I would like to address the question that came from my good friend, the rep from the middle of the state. And no, there was not any conversation in committee regarding the difference between juveniles and adults for this. I think that was unfortunate. I think that's part of the problem in having the Appropriations Committee dealing with a bill that should be more appropriately in the Judiciary Committee, because I would like to think that that would have come up in a committee that is more used to dealing with these kind of issues. I would like to say we have a new director of the department that handles corrections, and I have to commend him. He has come in with great energy, and he's looking to find new ways to improve that department and improve outcomes. I just think in this particular case, he might not have come up with the best solution. And I will repeat that I think the best solution is to defeat this now and let this be incorporated into a conversation in the Judiciary Committee, where they have a more wide-ranging discussion, where they look at sanctions and incentives in combination, because ultimately what our goal should be is not about raising money, because ultimately where we lose the most money is when these people go back to prison. That's the highest cost that we can possibly incur. And I think we need to be really focused on reducing recidivism. So I won't belabor this point, but I urge an aye vote on the amendment, and also very strongly urge an aye vote on the bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the reminder. Unmute. Members, we're voting on second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 49. All those in favor, please raise your hand to your screen. Thank you. All those opposed? The amendment has been adopted. We have another second reading amendment. Chairman Olson. Chairman Olson.
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Speaker, I was a little slow to click there. Yeah, so Mr. Speaker, having passed the First Amendment, I don't think the Second Amendment is relevant. So I would respectfully withdraw second reading amendment number 2 to House Bill 49.
Thank you, Chairman. The amendment has been withdrawn. House Bill 49, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall
Mr. Speaker, I'm sorry, there is one more amendment.
All right, I will refresh my page. Thank you, Chief Clerk. Sorry, folks, amendments come in and we've got to refresh and pull them up. So my apologies. So we have third reading amendment number 3, excuse me, second reading amendment number 3, Representative Andrew. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the second amendment reading number 3 to House Bill 49 and ask for your favorable decision. This is a pretty simple amendment. It basically deletes the increase in fees for food licenses. Restaurant entrepreneurs were probably the most harshly affected by the effects of the coronavirus pandemic. And I think that now is not a great time to be increasing their fees. There are also some of the smallest businesses in the state of Wyoming. And I would ask the body to join me in continuing to support them through this. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Representative Andrew. Any member for their first time on second reading of amendments number 3? First time on number 3. I have Representative Haroldson and then Summers and then Walters. Please proceed, Representative Haroldson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am going to speak on and for this amendment. I received, off of this bill, I received quite a bit of information in regards to what we just talked about in the last amendment, as well as what we're talking about in this amendment. And so all of the public comment that I've received off of yesterday has to do with these 2 areas. So I was really glad to see the amendments coming in these areas. So I believe that at this point in time, that this is definitely something we need to pursue, bringing these numbers back to where they were for the protection of a small business sector of our state that would be directly affected. So if we could do that, that'd be amazing. And I think it'd be a great step forward to make this bill be more advantageous or along the lines of what the people desire. And it wouldn't be that much of a cost change for what the state could bring in through this. It would just help. It would help make it a little less of a direct impact upon all of our different vendors and food distributors in the state in the realm of restaurants. So thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. On and for.
Thank you very much. I have Representative Summers, then Walters, then Burt. Representative Summers, Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker, thank you, and on and against the amendment. While serving on appropriations last year, we went through the department, and this was a year ago, so that this bill would have went through the last session. We went through Department of Ag fees that were all general fund, but we didn't take a look at at fees that were special revenue fees. So before all of this was special revenue that comes out of food establishments. And this is everything from, yes, restaurants and mobile food units, and also grocery stores. So also your big name grocers. And the reason this popped up is, so when we were looking at the budget from Department of Ag, we started to see that they were cutting positions in the inspection program for inspecting these entities. And so then the question arises, will they have enough inspectors, in fact, to do the work to inspect these? Some of the food establishments are in, if you have a county agreement, are inspected by county health officers, and some are inspected by the state out of basically either general fund or special revenue dollars. And so when we looked around and took a look at other states, and I'm not going to highlight all of them because I think my good colleagues will do it. And I know we don't always like to compare ourselves to the, to the state to the south of us, Colorado. But just to take a look at a basic one in their realm. So retail food establishment with 0 to 100 seating capacity, $385. And if you take a look at, I believe it's even the good state to our west, Idaho, who often their pricing's more similar to ours. If you look at, I think they have mobile food establishments without a commissary, it's going in at $80. With a commissary, $100. And then you look at all other food establishments effective in January 1st, 2022, 200. So I guess, Mr. Speaker, the point is it had been a long time since this had been updated. And I totally agree, right? Do we want to do this now? But do we want to have inspectors to actually inspect the food safety for the people buying from these establishments? And shouldn't that be paid for largely by the food establishments? And so I think that's the crux of the biscuit for me. And if you look at what's around us, it varies around us, but I could pull up other numbers, and I'm sure committee members will. But long story short, I don't think this is going to be the dime that breaks people, and we still need to do these inspections. And so on and against.
Thank you very much. Representative Walters, first time, and then Representative Burt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With that, I'd like to start by dividing the amendment, Mr. Speaker. And the division I would make, Mr. Speaker, would be lines 1 through 3 and line 17. And that would be division 2. The remainder of the amendment, lines 4 through 16, if you will, would be division number 1.
Okay, just give me a moment and give all of our members a moment to understand. So I'm just going to confirm. Division 1 is lines 1 through 3 and line 17. And division 2 is lines 4 through 16. Is that, will you affirm that, please?
Mr. Speaker, that is correct.
Thank you. Just a moment, please. I'm going to take just a moment. So members, what I'm doing is just a little bit of information as I'm trying to get to the right information, get the right things up. Is 1 through 3, because there's a division 1 through 3 and then 17. I just got to make sure that we don't mess up the title and leave something hanging in the title. And I know Representative Walters is very good at this, but I just want to make sure in my mind, or so I can rule that it is divisible. So affirming 1 through 3, and then Right. Chair rules it is divisible. What would you like to proceed with, Chairman? Or Representative Walters?
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the promotion. Let's dispatch with division number 1. And Mr. Chairman, that is the first couple lines and the very last line. And that has to do with the distribution of these funds. And so as it states in the bill, really the lines 1 through 3 are more technical in nature. So really the part we are focused on here is line 17. And this has to do with the distribution. And I think we've heard it discussed today that there's a need for inspectors to make sure these establishments are well inspected and that paying their own way, you might say, as they go through the inspections. And so I think it's certainly appropriate for these funds that are generated to go to the agency to help pay for those inspectors and offset those costs. As it was noted, some of these costs are shared or shifted to the local department. And so that would help the locals as well as they are doing the inspection on behalf of the state. So I think that distribution remaining as is, going to the agency, going to the departments at the local level is probably appropriate. And so I would ask for an aye vote on this division, Mr. Speaker, excuse me.
So members, any discussion on division 1 to second reading amendment number 3? Any discussion? Representative Newsom, for your first time, division 1.
I'm just asking for clarification. Can you restate the divisions? That would be helpful to me. Thank you.
Thank you. So division 1, which is under consideration at this time, is lines 1 through 3 and line 17 of the second reading amendment number 3. Division 1, you won't be charged for that, Representative Newsom, because that was a clarity, point of order, if you will. So thank you for that. Chairman Burkhart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A question on line 17 on division 1. When I read that in the bill, we are also deleting some existing language that is currently in that section. So I'm not sure deleting all of that 9 through 13 actually works.
Further discussion on the bill. On the amendment. On the amendment, Representative Yin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On Division 1, I just want to give some clarity for every representative to understand what's going on. So deleting the new language plus deleting the existing language from the bill means the language would be unchanged. So what the original amendment and the division wants to do is no longer give that 50% increase to the general fund and instead give it back to the original distribution, which was to the health department and or local district based on the original language that I sent out via email. So I just want to give everyone a context on what they're voting on. I'm a little ambivalent either way, to be honest, on the division. If we increase the fees, I have heard that many health departments aren't able to pay completely for the inspection based on these license fees already. So if you increase the fees and then not give it to them, they're still going to be in the same spot where they're not going to be able to pay for it. So I'm still considering it, but I want everyone else to know what they're voting on. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. Representative Majority Leader Summers, for your first time.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. And I'm neither for or against. I just kind of want to re-explain some of the issues. So yes, some counties do their own inspection. And so the money would go, some of that special revenue money goes to those counties that do their own inspection. Some of that special revenue money goes to the agency. What the agency gets is not enough money to cover their inspectors. So they have to use general fund dollars as well in that unit. So it's a unit that has both special revenue and general fund dollars. And so the reasoning originally was, well, let's put some in the general fund just to cover that inspection process. I'm fine with this. If we want to go down this route, it would give a little more to the locals and be fine that way. And likewise, it'll put more in the special revenue fund. So it's sixes for me, but I just wanted to explain it a little more. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. Any other member for their first time on Division 1 representing Blackburn?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Before we vote on this, I would hope that you could make it perfectly clear what the yes vote and no vote gets them. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Representative. A yes vote will adopt the division, a no vote will defeat the division. As far as the policy choice, that's up to the members of the body to make that case. Thank you. All right, any other member for their first time? Member for their first time?
Question.
Member for their second time? Remember, we want to make sure we know what to vote on, what you're voting on. So any member for their second time before the sponsor? Before the sponsor, second time, Representative Walters.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And just for clarity to the body, if you vote aye on this amendment, the funding generated from these fees will go to the agency to help offset their costs and via the agency onto the locals in the situations where the state and the locals have an agreement on inspection. So an aye vote gives the money to the agency. A no vote gives the money to the half of the money to the general fund. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And with that, I'd call for the question.
All right, members, we are voting on division number 1 to third reading amendment or second reading amendment number 3 to House Bill 49. All those in favor of the division, please raise your hand. All those opposed to the division? Division has been adopted. We're now in Division 2. Start with Representative Walters.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And with this, I would encourage a no vote. As we discussed yesterday, members, this is a fee that was put in place and has not been raised since it was put in place a little over 20 years ago. If you look at our surrounding states, with the increase that is proposed, we barely get up to the lower end of the states that surround us. So if you look at the cost of inflation around, all of our food products have increased, yet the state hasn't had the ability to increase what it is doing in terms of the inspection, the cost that it has towards these inspections. So this simply brings all of those fees up slightly. As we just amended the bill, it will send that money to the agency to cover those inspection costs or help to cover those. It will not cover them completely, but it will help to cover those costs. And this is a consumer protection necessity. We have these inspections in place for consumer protection. This allows the agency to come closer to covering their costs. And as I said, and will repeat, it is with the change, it gets us to the lower end of all of the states that surround us. With the change, we're still, as discussed earlier, only half of what the state to the south of us is. And if you look at the multiple ways other states calculate this cost or calculate these kind of fees, we do it in a very simple fashion here in Wyoming. It's easy to understand, and it's just appropriate that after 20 plus years, we adjust these for inflation, and that's really what this does. So I encourage a no vote on this division, and thank you for your time, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative. So members, just to remind, we're on Division 2, which is lines 4 through 16 of second reading amendment number 3, House Bill 49. I have Representative Hallinan and then Chairman Nicholas. Vice Chair Hallinan and then Chairman Nicholas. Please proceed, Representative Hallinan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question for Representative from, let's see, where's he from? I don't know where you're from. My question is,
Wyoming.
Yeah, he's from Wyoming. My question is this inspection done by the county or by the state? So thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative Hallinan. Chairman Nicholas, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So when I first was campaigning, running for office, I had a chili cook-off down here at Cheyenne Frontier Days, and it cost me $25. I had to cook the food in a certified kitchen in order to have a chili cook-off. So for $25, and now it's going to $50 or $100 for an annual license. It just doesn't seem unreasonable. Also, when I remember when you used to get 3 tacos for $1. Now you're lucky if you get a taco for under $5 or $2.50. So if you just take time and perspective, these certainly are not unreasonable, and it does cost the agency to perform these functions. And do you want to have the state pay for those inspections so that it's free to the provider, or should they pay for the cost themselves? To me, it's a simple question. So on and against.
Thank you very much. I have Representative Burt and then Clausen. Representative Burt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am on and for Division 2. I do like to see reduced fees passed along. I don't think increasing the, whether or not we keep, our fee cost current, or we even reduce the amount of the fee, is going to actually prevent any inspecting institution from actually going out and being able to do their job. And of course, we don't want to promote unsanitary food practices, and I don't think that's what this does. I will actually have to agree with the representative from, I believe, District 4. At a time where we're looking at trying to move our economy back into a positive aspect of bringing people in, opening up our doors at a full capacity, we're looking at our food establishments, especially in my district as well, have been hit extremely hard. And with that, when we're trying to look at how they can increase their numbers within the table turnovers to bring their profit, and most food establishments, I mean, if they can operate between a 5 and 10% profit margin, they're actually doing really, really well. There's a high food cost and an employment cost when it comes to restaurants, and food truck industries and stuff like that. Just the food industry in itself is extremely challenging to actually operate, and especially now that we look at the COVID aspect of it for the last year, those costs and those burdens have been put on those establishments even further. Where I do agree with my fellow colleagues on having to look at something like this in the near future, when our economy can actually support something, that I would agree with that. We need to bring our times into the modern age of that. Comparing our economy to the surrounding community in the states and stuff like that, I don't think is a fair judgment with the amount of population that we currently have versus other states. Those establishments in those other states may actually be able to afford increasing there because of the amount of people they have to be able to support their establishments. Kind of a toss up on both in that, but I don't think now is the time to where we need to increase our fees on businesses as they're trying to keep their doors open, get our economy back up and moving around. And I would say we could try to come back at a later time and reevaluate and readdress the issue. But I'm a on for the division, but I'd also be a no against the overall bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I have Clausen, Larson, Wilson, Schwartz. Clausen, Larson, Wilson, Schwartz. Representative Clausen, for your first time on the amendment, Division 2, lines 4 through 16 on the amendment. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On and for the division, this segment of business has just been beat up through these shutdowns, and though I agree fees should catch up over time, I don't think this is the time. Maybe next time, maybe in the budget session next go round, but I don't think this is the time to hit these guys. They're struggling, and again, I've heard it all throughout my district and basically all through the state. They're the people we hit the hardest, and raising the fees I don't think is appropriate at this time.
Thank you very much. Representative Larson Lloyd, and then Representative Wilson Schwartz, and then Sherwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I could maybe respond to the good doctor from the land of coal a little bit on his question, in that in his comments, both are correct. We have some counties where these inspections are done solely by the state, and others where the county and the state has an MOU and the state allows the county to do it. So it's a little of both, which was important to the last amendment, the last division, which we passed, which would allow more of these fees to go back and support inspections that are done by local inspection services within the county. Mr. Chairman, it's interesting to me, or Mr. Speaker, it's interesting to me that I'm hearing an overall sense that, yeah, the fees are antiquated and probably need to be adjusted, but just not now. And so, you know, I think we want to remember that the bill doesn't take effect until July. It's going to end. So that's in the near future, which was one of the comments I think I heard is that maybe in the near future we could do that. And July being the near future seems to be a reasonable approach. If keeping, and also the comment I think was accurate, Mr. Chairman, where we said that if we leave them the way they are, it doesn't prevent inspections from being done. Completely true. It's just going to impact, because the cost for those fees are going to have to come from a place that we as a legislature are trying to find funds to support, which is the general fund. The other part of that impacts the businesses directly is if we don't have the fees increased and we don't increase the general fund budget, then the agency will be limited on how soon they can get the inspections done. And so you could have, which is going to be more detrimental to a new food eating establishment or an old one, paying an extra $50, $100 a year, or waiting for the facility to open or to get your inspection for an extra 60 to 90 days. That could cause a curtailment in the operations your business. I think that most establishments would be in favor of paying the extra fee to make sure that they're able to continue on their day-to-day operations. And Mr. Chairman, I think for my esteemed colleagues who have served in this body for a while, this is really similar to the same action that we heard from the uranium industry, where they says we would much rather pay the fees ourselves and get this done to avoid delays from any of the, at that time, what was the federal government taking just an erroneous amount of time to get these applications and fees done. I think our food eating establishments want to have consistency, want to be able to know that their inspections are going to take place on a timely basis. And there's no doubt that, you know, everybody is impacted a little bit, but these fees are being raised up. I think what I've heard is everybody agrees that they're not adequate, that when is the right time. And I would just vote that we defeat this amendment, allow these modest increases in fees being paid by the food eating establishments to maintain consistency in their operation.
Thank you very much. I have Chairman Wilson, Representative Schwartz, Representative Sherwood. Chairman Wilson, first time, Division 2, second reading amendment number 3, House Bill 49.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and against this division, although kudos to our young new member for bringing amendments. I think that's great. And the previous speaker has said much of what I wanted to say, so I'll only flesh it out briefly. You know, it sounds like what we're saying is that rather than the providers paying for their services, we want to continue to have the non-existent coal and gas revenue subsidize it. And we've had a lot of discussion about that. I've had a lot of youngsters in my own family working in food service facilities, and it seems to me that it very frequently happens that inspections catch a lot of things. The refrigerator's unplugged, or the heating tray isn't at the right temperature, or something like that. And I think that there is a lot of benefit to the business for having these things caught early and corrected. The consequence of having a newspaper article about your business because 15 people got food poisoning will be far harder on your business than paying a little extra fee, so that the agency doesn't say, we're so broke, we're only going to inspect you every other year instead of every year. Because the reality is that they can't just continue inspecting with no revenue. They would have to change their schedule. And I think that would actually be worse for the restaurants who are only doing the best they can. But in all human enterprises, it's good to have a second set of eyes. So on and against the division. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
And we are a human enterprise with 60 sets of eyes. Next on the agenda, Representative Schwartz and then Sherwood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and against the division. In my youth, which I can almost remember, it was a while back, I worked as a chef and a kitchen manager. I spent a lot of time working with food inspectors, and to tell you the truth, they provide an incredibly valuable service. Partly educational and teaching people working in kitchens what you need to be doing to make your production of food safe, but more importantly, allowing the diner to have confidence that when they come to your establishment, they will not get food poisoning, because it happens. And there are parts of this country where restaurants and food establishments proudly display their inspection notification to show that it is a safe place to eat. And there are places we can find where we want to cut money, but I strongly believe that food inspections is not the place to begin on and against this division. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Representative Sherwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am on and against this amendment and will quickly share a boots on the ground perspective. In my community, we have a lack of access to inspectors, which slows the speed of business. This December, I was assisting a very tenacious and brave entrepreneur in opening a restaurant amidst the pandemic. And that opening date kept getting pushed back because there was not an inspector available to come and do a walkthrough of the kitchen. So this delay caused this business to lose money at a time where there was no money to be lost. So just an example of, yes, there are fees associated that our entrepreneurs pay for, but down the road, these fees save those businesses money. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much. I have members for their first time. Any other member for their first time? And Representative Hallinan, I see you, but you've already had your first time, so I'm trying to make sure I exhaust first times. Any other member for their first time? All this talk of food, now everybody's hungry. Representative Andrew for your first time. Representative Andrew.
First for a second, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. Any other member for their first time? Member for their first time. Member for the second time, Representative Hallinan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, I was impressed with the comments by my colleague from the lovely community of Lander. I think that this idea that the counties versus the state, I think the county in my state and in my community, we had a doctor from our community who was also a member of this legislature for about 12 years. And he inspected everything, and he was very careful about it. He closed some businesses down. So I think that this money is more appropriate that it would be spent in the county rather than the state. So I would be for this amendment. This amendment takes away this increase that's going to the state. It doesn't affect what happens in the county. And the county, I think, is the appropriate place where these inspections would occur. And the county also has done it in my county very well. And I don't know that there has been a state inspector that came in there and did any inspecting whatsoever. So for that reason, I'm for this amendment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Representative Hallinan. Any other member for their second time on the division of the amendment to House Bill 49? Representative Burt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I can also add a little bit of boots on the ground, some past history. Fresh out of high school, I did go to a technical culinary school in a land not too far from here, but in the Midwest. And I've studied foods. I've been within the culinary fields. I was a chef at different levels within different industries as well. And I understand the importance of inspections. I get that, and I'm not trying to take away the health aspect of that. So I mean, to get that out there to say that we're not trying to focus on the inspections. I get that. Everybody understands. They all want a clean and sanitary place of where their food's coming out. That's just basic human nature. We just want to make sure we're eating sanitized conditions. I too have also worked for a number of, or volunteer for a number of veterans organizations within my particular area, and there's a rodeo in a particular area that is almost 4 decades in the running. And within that, we do provide the catering and concession services to a particular rodeo, and we have for a number of years now. With that, part of that is to actually operate out of an inspected, approved kitchen facility. Now, if we're looking at the argument to where if we don't increase our fees, we're not going to be able to get inspectors out to our areas, I can tell you for the number of years that the county inspector that came out and inspected those conditions to make sure that we were still within the health code as a volunteer organization, that inspector has not charged our organization for as many years as we've run that. And the fact that these inspectors are able to volunteer their time and go out to organizations to make sure that the conditions are sanitary kind of goes against the fact that we can't get inspectors if we don't raise the fees. I think that's kind of almost working against itself. I also agree that the inspections need to be at the county level and not necessarily at the state level, where I think that the argument can also go back to where if the counties are trying to pass off their business and their fee collection back to the state level so they'll focus their money somewhere else. There's just so many things into this. Just increasing the fee, maybe $100 or a $50 increase of fee may not seem like a whole lot. But when we start looking at all the other fees and all the other registration fees and everything else that we're pushing this session as a whole, they start to add up on businesses and stuff like that. And I just don't think that having an additional $100 where it might not seem like a lot. I imagine a lot of us may carry the extra $50 in our pocket if we have the ability to. But I don't think it's just this one $50 is going to make or break it. But when we add another $50 or another $100 or something else down the road, we can talk about the increase of where a product may have cost us, a couple of dollars in a couple, years ago, and now we're up to $4, $5, $6. That also shows that every time we increase our fees on the businesses will pass that back on to the consumers. Businesses don't make money by paying more fees. They will inherently send that back to their food costs and everything else, and will you know, that the consumers that we have in our communities will also end up paying more for all those services down the road. It's just nature of business that businesses will pass that along. So again, it also a time where we're trying to help our Wyoming families try to save as much money as they can to enjoy life, to try to get the economy going. Again, the waterfall effect of just an additional maybe $50 that gets added on, and it gets added. And I said the increased fees will never stay with the business. It will always go back to the consumer. So again, for that, I am with the in favor of this division, but overall, I'm also against the bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So members and the public, just if you want to know where we are, first of all, we're getting close to lunch and we're talking about food and or something associated with food. But we're on Division 2, second reading amendment number 3, House Bill 49. I have Representative Larson, Nicholas, and then Wilson. Representative Larson, Lloyd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I think that, which is not unusual for me, have caused some confusion amongst my colleagues, and I apologize for that. So I'd like to go back and try and clarify again to my good colleague who has been a great physician of service in the land of coal. So in the previous vote that we made, which was the first division on this amendment, is where we said that the fees, that amendment, had we not passed it, would have taken 50% of those fees and put them into the general fund. We passed that amendment and kept those from going to the general fund so that the fees would stay in the agency, which would then have the ability to provide more funding to the locals who are doing the inspections, like you indicate are taking place up in your part of the world. The second division, the amendment that we're working on now, just is, do we raise fees or do we not raise fees? And if we don't raise them, they still just go back to the agency. If we do raise them, they go back to the agency. So it's not splitting the final resting spot of these fees. And then, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I would just urge a no vote on the amendment. And I think that the good Chairman of Labor and Health made the point the best in her first comment when she said, so we'll let the mineral industry continue to subsidize the cost of government for providing these type of services. And she's exactly right. We have a budget now that relies on the mineral industry to provide all of these types of funding for the most part. And so now we have a mineral industry, the extractive industry is what we'll call it, whether it be down in the southeast part of the state or coal country, oil and gas around the state, that, you know, this cows give all the milk. And it's probably time that some of the other cows start giving a little bit of milk to provide the services that they get from state government. And so if you own a health food facility, maybe it's time that you bellied up to the bar a little bit and paid a little more fee instead of putting that burden on the minerals industry. When do we say enough for them? When do we say, why do we continue to have to put the extra burden on this cow where the grass isn't green and she's only given a half a glass of milk? It's time to bring some other cows in the barn and start milking them a little bit. And this very modest increase to food service entities is a good first step on that. I'd encourage you to vote no on the amendment.
All right, so now we're hungry and thirsty. Thank you very much. So we'll continue with our discussion on this division. Chairman Nicholas and then Chairman Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to kind of look back at the big picture of why is this fee bill here? And why are we raising fees in the Department of Ag, that's responsible for inspection of food services and permitting for food establishments. The annual budget for the Department of Ag, the biennial budget, is $36.5 million. So that's what we pay out of the general fund every 2 years for that to operate. And the Department of Ag has 86 employees. They have, when you go in and look at the budget, it's amazing all the different responsibilities that we have bestowed upon the Department of Ag. Conservation districts, animal damage boards, classroom credits we can pass, dry bean commission, state meat inspections, food safety inspections, pesticide controls, laboratory, I mean, and the list goes on and on. So we had cuts that that the governor instituted, the chief executive instituted in July. That's the step 2 cuts. And that was typically a 10% reduction, anywhere between 8 to 10% reduction in your general fund dollars. So the Department of Ag had a reduction of $2.94 million. Boom. They had to take $2.94 million out of that $36 million budget and continue to provide the same services that we, the legislature, have established that they have to perform. So, but the governor also, the chief executive also then said, look, we realize that by reducing your budget, you're going to have to provide less services. So what he asked each agency to do is come back in and say, where would it be reasonable to reduce or cut or modify programs, or to find some other financial means to pay for those programs if there's any way possible. And in addition to that, the chief executive says, and by the way, we're going to impose step 3 cuts, which is up to another 5 to 7% cuts on top of step 2 cuts. And so for this agency, that was an additional $1.2 million. So the total cuts out of the agency's $36.5 million biennial budget is now $4.1 million. So this agency came to the Appropriations Committee and said, here's where we think we can make cuts that will least damage and impose costs on the citizens of Wyoming, and also where it would be reasonable to have some folks start paying for the services we provide. So that's how we got to these fees. These fees are basically trying to, in some small fashion, make up for the $4.1 million that we're cutting out of their biennial budget. And they either have to reduce services, or they got to let people go, or they've got to, I mean, that's really their only choice, unless we can find ways to make people who receive services for what they get. So I think you just have to look at the big picture on why we're doing this. We didn't want to raise fees on anybody. What we're trying to do is make people pay for the, at least in part, for the governmental services that the counties, through the auspices of the Department of Ag and in the state, provide to them. And that's all we're doing. And we're trying to take care of that. And by the way, if we continue to nick away at every dime and penny that we added back into the general fund, as proposed by the various agencies, and there's 98 of them, then the budget reductions that you'll be seeing in our budgetary bill when we present it to you in March, we're going to be more and more in deficit. So everything that we take away, that we've taken away, if you put back in, then we've got to find another place to cut the money out some way, or raise revenue to replace it. So on and against the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman Wilson. Second.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and against the division. And just 2 points of clarification. Members, especially the new members, remember that when you see amendments to statute, you're not seeing necessarily the whole statute. You're only seeing the part that's brought in. So I just wanted to bring, I've got my statute book open here in front of me, and I just wanted to clarify 2 points that were brought up. One, there was a discussion about these folks, inspectors evidently kind of volunteering their time for the nonprofits, which I will tell you was not out of the good of their heart. earlier in this same statute section, it says license requirements and fees for temporary food events operated by nonprofit organizations shall be waived. So that was a legislative decision that nonprofit organizations wouldn't be charged. I mean, we can certainly change that in the future if we want to charge them too, but for now, that's why they're doing it for no charge. And further, the bit that we see in this, the part that we kind of took out, that the fees shall be distributed as follows. There was a question about the county health departments. So just so that you know, it says in statute, and it would continue such, in any county or city without a local health department, the agriculture shall receive 90% and Department of Health shall receive 10. In any county or city with a local health department, the local health department shall receive 85%, ag 10%, and health 5%. So just to be clear, we state in statute the distribution of these fees. They will continue to go where they are now. It's just a question of the amount. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clear. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you for bringing out the Green Book. I appreciate that. Any other member for their second time? Members for their second time before lunch? I'd like to finish this up before lunch. Representative Andrew, for your second time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to bring some clarifying information. As someone with a really good grasp on this industry in Wyoming and in other states, Wyoming, as the fee structure stands right now, is generally one of the friendliest states to deal with in terms of health inspections. We have some of the lowest wait times for initial inspections, and we're visited quite frequently by the inspectors. In the states that we're talking about where the fees are higher, the wait times can be much longer than they are here. And I have experience with that. I would also like to push back on the notion that we're forcing the coal industry to pay for our inspections. The restaurant industry is one of not very many things subject to sales taxes. Prepared food has a state sales tax on it. So our industry generates a lot of revenue in that regard. We also contribute significantly to property taxes. So we are not subsidizing the restaurant industry. I also want to say that many people in this industry are running very small businesses. And in order to make money, they have to run them very lean. Their take-home pay comes from scraping up $100 here and $50 there. And this is just another one of those opportunities I'm trying to maintain for them for at least a little while longer until we get through this pandemic. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative Andrew. Any other member for their second time? Member for their second time before the divider, before Representative Walters. Second time before Representative Walters. Representative Walters.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, I would encourage a no vote on this division. This really is about making sure that the rate that's being charged to these establishments comes closer to covering the cost of doing the service for the establishments. And remember, it's more than just restaurants. This includes any food handling entity in the state of Wyoming. And so while, and a little bit more clarity on the whole mineral industry, the mineral industry pays property tax at 100% versus an industrial or a retail side, it's at 11% of their assessed value. Plus they pay severance tax. About 75% of our state's budget is covered by the mineral industry. So, and I would argue and contend that the mineral industry has been affected as greatly as any restaurant, if not more greatly. I would remind the body that in May, there were oil was trading at below zero. I would remind the body that 4 years ago, we were shipping over 400 million tons of coal out of the state. We're at half of that today. I would remind the body that in June, Wyoming had 0 rigs exploring for oil and natural gas in the state of Wyoming for the first time in this history of the state. So the mineral industry that that contributes 75% of the revenue to the general fund has been hit extremely hard. And so all these fees do is help to cover the cost of these inspections by these food establishments. So I would encourage a no vote on this division, and thank you for your time, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. So members, we are voting on Division 2, second reading amendment number 3 to House Bill 49. All those in favor of the division, please raise your hand. Thank you. All those opposed? Thank you. The division has failed. House Bill 49, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a 3rd time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. All right. Chief Clerk, we do have a single amendment on Senate File 64. Is that what you have on your record?
Yes, sir.
Or 60, excuse me, Senate File 60?
60, yes.
And we have some committee reports.
And we also still have an open roll call.
Yeah, so let's, so members of the body and members of the public, I apologize. We had committees still going when we convened, and they showed up probably 25 minutes into our deliberations as we were starting to do second reading, and we just got hungry, I guess, and kept going. I got hungry and kept going. So I apologize for that. We'll complete the roll call, and I want to assure the public that our members were here doing their jobs. We're just completing the roll call because I got out of order. So Chief Clerk, please complete the roll call.
Bear.
Here.
Clifford.
Here.
Connolly.
Here.
Flitner.
Here.
Hallinan.
Here.
Hunt.
Here.
Martinez.
Here.
Ottman.
Here.
Stivar.
Present.
Washit.
Here.
Worf.
Here.
Wilson.
Here.
We have 60 present, sir.
Thank you. And like I said, I assure the public that they've been here all along. I just didn't complete the roll call in a timely manner. So my appreciation, Chief Clerk. Chief Clerk, would you read the committee report in? And we're doing this because so we can have this bill available for general file later today, so they can be put in the system and ready for you. Chief Clerk, committee report.
Mr. Speaker, your committee number 10, Labor, Health, and Social Services, to whom was referred Senate File 53 engrossed, Private Ground Ambulance Service Provider Assessment Act. Respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass with the following amendments. Ayes Representatives Clifford, Connolly, Flitner, Hallinan, Martinez, Wilson. Noes, Ottman, Stivar, Worf. Signed, Representative Wilson, Chairman.
Thank you very much. So the next bill for our consideration, second reading, is Senate File 60.
Sorry. Senate File 60, sponsored by Revenue. Monthly ad valorem tax revisions 2, an act relating to ad valorem taxation of mineral production.
We do have an amendment. And members, if just so you know, refresh your page if you haven't received it or don't have it pulled up, because we do have an amendment. Representative Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move second reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 60 and ask for favorable consideration. So when we're in session, one of the things I do when I put my head down, pray, and then after session is over, I think about some of the trends I've seen, positive and negative trends, and how I've contributed to them in a positive and negative way, what I can do. And
Representative
one of the
Gray.
more troubling trends I've seen is
Representative Gray.
Yeah.
Could I ask you to put your mic back where it was when you first started? Because folks on the internet have told me that they have a difficult time. You change your position in some way, and it's difficult to hear you on the internet. So
Okay,
please adjust your microphone for that, please.
Can you mute yourself? Because I take my headphones off because there's like a back. Thanks.
I think it's the echo of the entire chamber as you speak.
Okay, sorry. I was trying to be difficult. One of the more troubling trends I've seen is counties transferring functions that they have typically covered or handled and transferring them to the state. And we saw this quite a bit in committee number 1 over the last 2 years, and quite a bit on the floor. It is becoming more and more common. And just yesterday, I saw it at least twice. I mean, that's just what I observed. And sometimes I just vote no in those situations, but I really resolved to myself this year that while these are difficult to pass, that especially in bills that come through committees that I'm on, and we have those extra hours of expertise, I try to fix them with amendments on the floor. So now specifically on this bill, what this does, the counties used to collect this ad valorem tax, or they are collecting this ad valorem tax, and this function is being transferred to the state in these bills. And in committee, the director of the Department of Revenue came in and said that the setup costs for the state to collect this, it's going to be at least $300,000. I exchanged some emails with him, and it's probably going to be around $500,000. It looks like now as of this morning. And that's why there's that appropriation in there, that $1 appropriation, and that really hasn't been adjusted for reality. And I just think that too often these discussions aren't had. So what the amendment does is it requires the counties to pay for an apportioned amount of the upload of this system. The system cost to allow the state to do this. And this was a function that the state assigned to the counties to pay for out of their general property tax collections. And the general property tax mills, those 12 mills, are for the administration of county government. And I want to respond to the point that I think will probably be made, which is that, well, this was an unfunded mandate from the start. Well, it's not really. And too often that argument is made. The 12 property tax mills that are general property tax mills for the administration of county government are there because the counties are a political subdivision of the state. And the whole idea behind their creation in state statute is that you have that subsidiarity and advantage, but you also have scale, and that they're going to do some functions that the state asked them to do in an efficient manner. One of them is elections. Another one of them, it was the collection of this ad valorem tax. So it's not an unfunded mandate. It was funded by these 12 property tax mills. If we're going to transfer this to the state, I don't think it should be an unfunded mandate from the state side. And we need to start protecting our taxpayers and our state more on this chamber, I really believe. And so it's not an unfunded mandate, what we're asking the counties to do, but what this bill does is actually an unfunded mandate in reverse, which is it asks the state to take over this function without having the counties reimbursing the state at all for what they're saving in their general property tax mills that used to cover this function that we had asked them to cover out of those mills. So that's the amendment. It apportions those costs, those $500,000 costs, or those estimated $500,000 costs across counties, and it's good for our state. So I ask for an aye vote on this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Representative Gray. We'll go with Majority Floor Leader Summers and then Chairman Harshman. First time.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. On and against this amendment. And one, I don't know that counties can afford it, but let me talk about a bigger issue. So oftentimes counties will get in lawsuits with large corporations to collect taxes. And that taxes is both the states and the counties, but the state never pitches in on those lawsuits, and the counties do. I know that because my county's done it a lot. And but in the end, if they win those suits, the state gets their share. I guarantee you, over time, that in alone would have paid for this over and over and over. I just do not like to shift this down to the counties, and frankly, I'm against this amendment. I think the counties have paid over and over for this in other ways.
Thank you, Chairman Harshman, for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and against the amendment. Members, I just sent kind of a little one pager. It's in your inbox. If you would open that up. And if we were all together, it'd be in your top left basket on your desk. And it would have SF 60, second reading amendment, and my initials on it. So really, I just want to kind of a little review of what we're really talking about here. First of all, I think, you know, in the Constitution, Article 12, counties are the state. They're not like municipalities. You know, municipalities are like a group of people that get together and they've got a little home rule, and they're allowed in our Constitution to pass ordinances, those kind of things. But counties are the state, and they can't do anything that we don't tell them to do. And, you know, I think probably in Wyoming history, you go back into the 70s, we probably gave them a little bit more home rule. But the bottom line, all these things, these functioning counties are things that we've told them to do. And so then if you look at the mills on that handout that I sent you, and just mineral production, you know, in the latest year, 10.6 billion in assessed value. And so minerals paid 665 million in property taxes. That's ad valorem property tax, what we're talking about. And you know that minerals are assessed at 100%, right? And I think we might be the only state at 100%. As opposed to like our homes, 9.5%, lowest in the country. And our businesses, 11.5%, lowest in the country. And that's a good thing, because this 100% on minerals has allowed us to have those low rates. But then you look at, so that's the assessed value rate. But the other part of this is how many mills are actually assessed out there. And you can see the average mill levy in the state of Wyoming is 62.8%. Now, for most of our modern history is well over 70%. And there's a few counties, I think Albany passed a bond issue. There's a few others that have passed bond issues. But the big change has happened is that we no longer bond for schools. And so we're paying really the lowest average rate in modern Wyoming history, 62.8%. And you can see where those go. School Foundation, the 12 mills is a statewide assessment. That was school reform. School Foundation also receives the 31 mills, 6 that were countywide mills and 25 that were district mills. And that goes way back when we used to have over 100 school districts in our state. And interestingly enough, during that school reform, we lost 2 mills. We took 2 off the books that every school district was using. So we reduced the number of mills. And then you can see the all others, 19.8. So 11.8, as the presenter of the amendment talked about, goes to counties, the rest to college, special districts, and a few to locals. So schools are, you can see under the total, about 68%. And then the other part of this, really, you got to think about when we say we're doing this reverse unfunded mandate, is what is the purpose of these property taxes? And the 68% goes to fund schools. And then you look at these recapture school districts, there's 7 of them. So you look at Campbell, fully funds their school district. They're a countywide district, and they kick $4 million back to the state. Well, there's like 8 districts with less than a $4 million annual budget. So Campbell's funding those. Look at Converse County, you know, and obviously the oil play, fully funding their district, 29 million, almost 28 million. That's in Converse 1, and then Converse 2, another 5.7. But I think the big one, Lincoln, you can see, look at Sublet 1 and 2. So those together, they kick back about $43 million back to the state to fund schools. Well, if you added up Sublet 1 and Sublet 9, those are the only 2 districts in Sublet. Their total budgets, their total school foundation budgets, I think, are like $27.5 million. And they're kicking back another 43. And then Teton, of course, is now become recapture, but those are all property taxes, non-mineral. And so this $100 million gets kicked back by these school districts and counties that have more wealth than what is actually needed to educate their children. And so then we're gonna, put another kind of charge back on. We're gonna say, well, it's gonna cost Sublet more and Converse more and Campbell more, even though you're giving us money back to go ahead and collect these for really a state function. And I just think we're trying to move this thing into the Department of Revenue and mirror it up with severance tax to make this thing easier for companies, easier for the state, more efficient, more accurate, and in the end, have less harm. Because if a company gets into trouble, we're going to know about it at the same time when their severance taxes are short. We're going to know their property taxes are short, not a year and a half into this. And so this is, I just think this is really, I want us to focus on the big picture on this bill. This bill is really important. It's going to finish this thing. It's supported by everybody. And I think this amendment really is, and I'm all due respect, I think it's focused on the wrong thing. And I think let's focus on the big picture of Wyoming on this. And because we're all winners in Wyoming because of these 7 recapture districts and the work that's being done. So on and against the amendment for the bill, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker, thank you. Members, and thanks for your indulgence. That was a little long, but thank you.
Thank you very much. Representative Connolly and then Hunt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and against the amendment and in favor of the bill. And I just agree with our last 2 speakers. I've had the pleasure, I would say, of serving on the Revenue Committee when this bill has been heard, and on the Coal Bankruptcy Committee, where switching to monthly payments of ad valorem taxes was one of the biggest things that we undertook. It's been a labor, honestly, for the past 2 years, and to get it right. And we're just about there, and this bill does it. The amendment, though, what it does to me is says that those counties right now, those counties that have been waiting for taxes, back taxes to be paid to them, will now have an additional charge. And just the ones right now, not the ones yesterday, not the ones tomorrow, but the ones right now. To me, that doesn't make sense and is not fair. It is actually pretty confusing to me as well. I also don't see us doing anything comparable for all of the other divisions of the Department of Revenue, right? Their property tax division. We don't assess counties for the Department of Revenue to kind of move money around. And so it doesn't make sense that we're going to take out one element of what the Department of Revenue does and require them to charge back to counties. So again, on and against the amendment and in favor of a very good bill.
Thank you very much, Madam Minority Floor Leader. Representative Hunt, for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and against the amendment, I represent 2 of the, frankly, the poorest counties in the state. And of course, that's frankly, they're great places to live, but the fact is their property values are pretty darn low across the county. And so these are 2 counties that really struggle already in some years to just try and make their ends meet. And so to penalize them, or any other county for that matter, but to penalize these folks for a situation that is largely no fault of their own, I just think is the wrong way to go and the wrong way to look at this. And so, the good minority floor leader, her home county somewhat similar. I mean, in that case particularly, the land area is so large, and they have so much to oversee and try and maintain infrastructure-wise, so on and so forth. It just doesn't work. And so, I think that this is. I just think that this has the potential to do a lot of harm to our smaller, poorer counties that don't have the property tax basis or the mineral resources as some of our other counties do. So on and against. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Representative Jennings, for your first time on Senate File 60, second reading amendment number 1.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So 6 years ago, I sat on revenue and corporations, and on revenue, the counties were the driver for this bill. They are the ones that wanted this. They wanted to make sure that they weren't going to continue seeing harm from the bankruptcies and stuff of that nature. And they've been collecting this all along, whether it's an unfunded mandate or not. They've done it for a lot of years. And so I look at this as they're going to benefit. We're going to shift the industry to a monthly payment, and there's going to be less harm done to the counties. So since they've been doing it, I don't understand why the kickback of why we would not want them to put a little skin in the game from the point of at least helping put the program in place that would pay for that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative Jennings. Representative Craigo, for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I echo on and against the amendment, and I echo a lot of the statements that have already been made by a lot of the other representatives. But I just wanted to point out that as we work through this Senate File 60, that industry actually requested that the state be in charge of implementing the program just due to its complexity. And obviously the state is already doing severance, and so they know how to handle these monthly reports, and the counties do not. And so that's one of the reasons it ended up where it did. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. Any other member for their first time? Any member? Representative Sweeney, for your first time.
First for a second. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. Any other member for their first time? First time. Seeing none. Any member for their second time? Before lunch. Second time. Chairman Harshman. Chairman Harshman.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. And members, I just wanted to point out and appreciate the debate. And I just sent another email to you just for more information on this. And I think you can take a look at that page 5 of that chart. It comes from the Department of Education. It just shows kind of that the number of mills paid in the state really over about the last 40 years. And page 5 kind of gives you a visual, and the whole memo is good. But I just wanted to point out, Mr. Speaker, that I sent that out. I think I sent it. I'll double check. I don't see it hitting my email, but and again, urge your no vote. And thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. Any other member for their second time? Second time before the sponsor. Any member for their second time? Representative Sweeney.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I encourage a no vote also on the amendment, totally in favor of the bill. I think Chairman of Revenue brought up a number of very valid, very good points. And I believe our counties are doing a tremendous job. And I don't think they're, my belief is they're not shirking any of their responsibilities or try to turn things over. This would really, I believe, be detrimental in the scheme of things. And I'd point out to you that my belief is with this moving forward, I believe the number pointed out in the committee, if I remember right, was that the state tends to gain from this. I can't remember if it was 28 to $40 million that they would not have, we would not have seen if this all works properly.
And so with that, Mr. Speaker, before lunch, I urge your no vote on the amendment and a positive vote on the bill.
Thank you very much. Representative Jennings for your second time, Representative Jennings, second time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So this amendment is not, the counties have been doing a good job. They've run into some issue here. It is not about counties not having done a bad job. It's that we're shifting a workload from them to the state. And this amendment is only saying, hey, you're still collecting the goodie for 12% of this. And so why would they not put in a little bit? Because they're losing the workload on that and we're shifting it to the state. Why should they not? On and for the amendment.
Thank you. Any other member for their second time on the amendment? Second time on the amendment before the sponsor. Before the sponsor, to the sponsor, Representative Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And responding to those points, first, the representative from Pinedale, Majority Floor Leader. So he talked about the fact that counties are currently on the hook for going into lawsuits when they can't collect. And I think that's a great point in support of the amendment. As a compromise, I didn't say that the Attorney General shall portion the costs that they're going to cover now that the state's going to take that over. I'm just asking them to apportion the costs on the $500,000 estimated expenditure for the Department of Revenue to create this system. But he's right that now the state's going to take that on. And how many positions is the Attorney General going to come forward with us on for that? We're not seeing that in the bill. Just like right now it says $1 as opposed to $500,000 for the system cost. That's a reason to pass the amendment as a compromise. I didn't include that in there. To respond to the chairman of appropriations, first on the point that counties are created in the Constitution, I agree. But they're still political subdivisions of the state, and in statute, we set aside their duties. And this was a duty that we had set aside for the counties. And then, went through a portion, who collects the funds in response to that point and that discussion. It's true that the counties only collect a portion of the funds, but the workload distribution was given to the counties that now the state is transferring over to. So just because they only collect a portion of the funds doesn't mean that they shouldn't help pay for transferring that workload distribution to the state. Yes, they distributed it to the school districts, to the state, those portions of those mills. And that's actually a reason to do it, because now the state's going to do that as well, that distribution, that sending of the funds to special districts, those mills for them, the mills to the school districts. So I think that's another reason to do this amendment. The other thing I wanted to respond to is the idea that the chairman of appropriations said that this isn't focused on the right things, that we need to focus on the bill from 30,000 feet up. And I think it is. I would really push back on that. I think as legislators, we need to look at the details here. And frankly, I think it's really disappointing that the cost of this isn't in the bill. They put this $1 placeholder. I'm very confused as to why that's even there still. But why wouldn't you include the cost to the bill and the fiscal note to the bill in that bill? I mean, frankly, that should have been in the original one a year ago. And now on the second wave of this, the correction, because that was passed, there were a lot of problems in it. We're still not saying what the pay for is. Now, I kind of want to respond to the next two individuals, the representative from Laramie and the representative from Niobrara County. I want to respond to them actually in tandem because they actually contradicted each other in their statements. So first, to respond to the representative from Laramie, they said, well, she said that counties that are waiting for their distribution or this ad valorem tax are going to pay more. Well, I can guarantee you if I had distributed this based on population, they would have said that's unfair based on the fact that this is about mineral ad valorem production in some counties like hers with a lot of population don't have a lot of mineral ad valorem collection. If I had distributed this equally to each county, I can guarantee you that would have been challenged. So the way we did it, and which I think is the correct way, is we distributed it based on their total ad valorem mineral production. So it's based on their current workload, because that's being transferred. A county like Campbell County that has a lot of FTEs distributed to this, a lot of administrative work distributed to this, that's being offloaded more to the state than Niobrara County. And I would push back respectfully to the representative, the former chairman of the Ag Committee, is that his county is going to pay very little in this, if anything. I don't think they'll pay anything, because the mineral, or very little, because the mineral, it's based on the mineral ad valorem cost right now. And so, you know, that's one of the reasons why his county isn't as flush. There's not as much mineral ad valorem production. So it's going to be distributed based on that production, because that's the amount of workload shift. That's the way I would say to do it. But I can guarantee you, if we had split it up equally per county, I think justifiably there would have been a lot of criticism of that. If we had split it up based on population, I think there would have been justifiably been a lot of criticism of that. So the way we did it was based on the percentage of the state's total mineral ad valorem production, because that's what's being saved. That's what the workload is right now that is being transferred to the state. To respond to the representative from Natrona County, you know, no one has accused anyone of shirking. This isn't about motivations. This is just about a trend. And this is one episode of a trend, which is that time and time again, the state is taking over functions that the counties used to do through their 12 property tax mills, their general property tax mills. And this is really adding up. And I don't think a lot of people are talking about it. I mean, you always hear about fees, that, well, the fees should pay for the service that is being provided. Well, how many times, if this is occurring 10 to 15 times a session, which I would estimate it is, what is the add up on this? Just this one that I identified being on the committee. I'm not sure I would have even realized that if I weren't on the committee, is going to cost the state $500,000. And these are adding up, and it's not about motivation. It's about what's right. The reality is that this was a duty that was given to the counties to pay for out of their administrative general 12 property tax mills. And when the state takes it over, the counties should help with that duty. And this is just, it's not talking about the attorney general costs. This is just for the $500,000 upload costs for the new system for the Department of Revenue. And it's good legislating. And it's detailed legislating. And, you know, I guess the other thing I would say here is that this is brought sincerely. I mean, this is not an easy thing to pass. You know, I think about the most difficult things to pass on the floor, reductions on general fund. I've probably only seen 5 or 6 reductions on general fund, second and third reading, my 4 years here. I have never seen one of these reversed. I think this is actually more difficult. I'd say it's more difficult than the second, but it's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do. And so I'd ask for an aye vote on this and call the question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So members, we're voting on second reading of amendment number 1 to Senate File 60. All those in favor of the amendment, please raise your hand to your screen. Thank you. All those opposed? The amendment has failed.
Division.
Division being called. So members, if we were doing voice votes on the floor, there'd first been a voice vote, then there'd be a standing vote, and the chief clerk would have counted. But because of the format we're in, we're going to do a roll call vote. So Chief Clerk, please call the roll on second reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 60.
Andrew.
Aye.
Baker.
Aye.
Banks.
No.
Bear.
Aye.
Blackburn.
Aye.
Brown.
No.
Burkhart.
No.
Burt,
Aye.
Clausen,
No.
Clifford,
No.
Connolly,
No.
Prego,
No.
Duncan,
No.
Eklund,
No.
Air,
No.
Flitner,
No.
Fortner,
Aye.
Gray,
Aye.
Greer,
No.
Hallinan,
Aye.
Haroldson,
Aye.
Harshman,
No.
Heiner,
Aye.
Henderson,
No.
Hunt,
No.
Jennings,
Aye.
Kenner,
No.
Knapp,
No.
Larson Lloyd,
No.
Larson Dan,
Aye.
McGuire,
No.
Martinez, Martinez,
No.
Nyman, Nyman, Newsom,
Aye.
Nicholas,
No.
Oakley,
No.
Obermuller,
No.
O'Hearn,
No.
Olson,
No.
Ottman,
Aye.
Paxton,
No.
Provenza,
No.
Roscoe,
No.
Schwartz,
No.
Sherwood,
No.
Simpson,
No.
Summers,
No.
Stiff,
No.
Stivar,
Aye.
Sweeney,
No.
Walters,
No.
Washit,
No.
Western,
No.
Wharf,
Aye.
Williams,
Aye.
Wilson,
No.
Winter, Winter,
Aye, please.
Yin,
No.
Zwanitzer,
No.
Mr. Speaker,
No.
Nyman.
Aye.
Closing vote, are there any changes? Paxton? No to aye. Newsom? Aye to no. Further changes? Further changes? Paxton, your hand is still up. What is your vote?
Well, that was a mistake. I accidentally pushed the hand. My vote is no.
Paxton, no. Further changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 18 aye, 42 no.
Senate File 60, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a 3rd time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. All right, Chief Clerk, or any business from you, and then we'll get to a re-referral.
No, sir.
All right, Chairman Wilson, did you have a re-referral for us?
Mr. Speaker, if I must, I would like to re-refer Senate File 53 to your committee number 2. And if they want to bounce it right back out again as extraneous, that would be fine with me. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Senate File, was it 53, Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Senate File 53 is referred to committee number 2, appropriations. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the House stand in recess until 2 p.m.
Thank you. Any committee announcements? Chairman Nicholas.
Yes, your House Appropriations will meet immediately on adjournment to do re-referral Senate File 53 on noon recess.
Thank you for the prompt service, Chairman Nicholas. Chairman Zwanitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 7 will meet in 10 minutes to hear Senate File 18. And we will not be hearing House Bill 14 today. We're holding it back to do some amendments.
Thank you very much. Any other announcements? Any other announcements? Members of the House, we are in recess until 2 p.m. Thank you for your good work.